bring your warm clothes and your waterproof.
We live in the mountains, so it's all about the layers.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
I was in Calgary in April, and it snowed. I was there for 3 weeks, and it snowed like 6 times.
Oh yeah, we had some good snow in April. Usually we still have snow in May, but I don't think we did this year.
Well, I was a little surprised and taken off guard. And I didn't take my winter boots and all that sort of jazz. I'm like, oh, snow.
Yeah.
Hi, Shakira. Hi,
Hello,
Miro.
how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I've heard a bit about you from when I met Ronnie last week. So nice to
Oh,
see you.
good. Yeah, Ronnie says she's gonna join in tonight. Good.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we've got a great guest speaker coming on tonight. I'm super excited. And Armando, you got her book.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, right here.
That's right. And I think there's someone else tuning in tonight that already has ordered it as well. So have you started it?
I've been flipping through it, looking at the highlights. And, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, she's very excited. I don't think this is her first book. I'm not sure. I know that she's a published author, so I'm thinking it's not her first.
You know, the foreword was written by her son, so that was the first piece that I was interested in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What an interesting life that young man has had.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
And can you share a link to the title and author? Like I heard about the special guest, but I didn't have a chance to look into it at all. So
I can.
Yeah, actually, it's just easier if I can have a link.
Yeah, no, I can put one in the, it might be a little bit later, Tanya, but I will do it.
Yeah, just the names that I have seen, heard, and understood. Lainie Liberty. Or actually, you know what I'll do? Okay, I just took a screenshot.
There you
How
go.
smart you are. Yeah. Thank you. There.
That.
I sometimes feel like I'm juggling because I'm letting people in, like talking. It's like, I need a co-host, LJ.
Yeah, I was just about to volunteer. That way you can do your thing and I can let people in.
That's okay. I'm usually able to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, it isn't like it's the Alberta call or the national call where there's, 100+ people on here. So.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
True.
Yeah, it's nice to have a co-host so that there's someone that can, well, as long as you have muting powers.
How do I make you co-host? I don't even know.
Go into participants, click on that, and you'll find my name. And under more, you can just say make co-host.
There you go. I just did it.
Yeah, you did.
Me.
Okay, so I can let people in for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
Oh, and there's your guest speaker coming in.
There she is. Aw, I look at their dog, so sweet. Hi, Lainie. Hi.
I lost it.
What did you lose?
Oh no, you're in. Okay. I thought I lost you into the ethers.
Oh no. No, it was the transition from my dog to me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, maybe we'll get started. It's just a little after 7 here. So I'm Norma Jean. For those of you who are new here, this is the National Life Force, Canada Education Think Tank. Life Force Canada is more than just education, however. Its mission is to protect our freedoms and our rights. And we are a platform that's made up of Canadians from across the nation who all volunteer their time and energy to help create the Canadian Restoration Plan. So that is an empowered future for all of us. So we work together and collaboratively as a nation, separately as provinces, and individually as counties, but always with the same purpose of creating a restoration plan for the new earth. So we have 9 pillars in Life Force Canada. Education is only one of them, but I am a little biased, and I always say that I think it's the most important pillar because ultimately our entire future depends on how we raise and educate our kids. So if you haven't already, signed up for Life First Canada, I encourage you to do that. We have so many great things going on, and you know, just by joining, you get emails and you can have access to everything that we're doing. So until last summer, I was a special ed teacher in the public school system. I'm also the mom of 2 grown men, both of whom struggled to be successful in the current school system. So I know the system from both perspectives, and seeing its many shortcomings is why I decided to become the facilitator of this think tank. We all know that we're overdue for a complete overhaul of the education model. And that's why we created this think tank, was to support all of us. So whether you're a parent, teacher, administrator, or just simply someone who cares about the future of our children, the future of humanity, this is a place that we can bring people together who are passionate about education and our children and who want to create change. So if this is your first time to the meeting, first of all, I'd like to tell you that we have an educational portal, which is a database-backed website that allows parents and educators to connect. So if you have something to offer, like a program or a workshop, you can offer it on there, or your services as an educator or resources. And if you're looking, you can go on there and search for those things. So I will put that in the chat a little bit later, the link for it, but it's an amazing tool. So whether you're just getting started or you're seasoned, it's a great place to let people know about what you're doing, or search for services and resources that you're looking for. So if this is your first time, there's a reactions button down at the bottom of the screen. That's where you can raise your hand if you have any questions or comments. We just find that that's kind of the most efficient and effective way, and make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. So we actually have a couple new faces here tonight, which is wonderful. I'd like to welcome you and take just a few minutes now for everyone who's new to have an opportunity to introduce themselves and just tell us where you're from and what brought you here tonight, whether you're a parent, educator, what your passion around education is. So let me see. Who was the first one here? She's gone now. Oh, Tanya, there you are. Tanya, you said that this was your first time to our think tank, right?
Yes, yep. But not for lack of wanting to be here.
Pardon me?
Not for lack of wanting to be here.
No, I know your schedule. So you are in Canmore, Alberta.
Yeah, and I am actually on the Health and Wellbeing Alberta Committee because I've got some holistic nutrition background, but I also was a piano teacher for, 30-ish years. So I do have a bit of an education background from that perspective. So I know what it's like, and I have 2 kids growing up too, and one who struggled in school and at one point wanted to be a teacher because she recognized that most teachers are the bright genius honor students, whereas what they really need is teachers that did struggle in school. So there's somebody to relate to the kids that struggle in school, instead of just assuming that everybody wants to grow up and be an academic.
Yep. Yeah. A little more empathy, a little more understanding, like from the ground up. Well, welcome. We're glad you were able to make it tonight, Tanya.
Thank you.
Shakira, you are also new this evening, I believe. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to be here. I am just finishing teachers college, actually in Ontario, but I'm planning to move to BC at the end of the summer. So, can't hear me very well. Sometimes it's kind of quiet. Is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm finishing teachers college this summer in Ontario, and then moving to BC at the end of August is the plan. So around like Vancouver, Burnaby area, I think. To be confirmed. And I just want to get more connected to the education community there. So I probably will be just supply teaching. So I'm not investing too much in the public school system, but I get to continue learning that way and focus a bit on hopefully starting some after school evening programming or something on the side for youth.
Well, the portal will be very useful to you then, Shakira.
Yes.
It'll be a great place for you to put the word out there that you're taking students or whatever it is that you're offering. That's great. And BC's awesome. And I'm really close to Burnaby, so you'll have to keep in touch with me when you get moved out. Welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Manu, I don't think that you have been with us before, have you?
No, this is my first time.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you-
Yeah, I actually saw the link in the Freedom School BC chat. So I help out Ronnie, and I just haven't been able to lately, but I was just going through the chat today and noticed the link, and I was like, oh, this is sort of a topic I was interested in. So wanted to jump in. Yeah, for education wise, I've always been interested in teaching, and I was actually like after my bachelor's, I was going to go and do my teaching program, but honestly, I just don't want to be involved in sort of the school system right now. I'd rather do something independently and stuff. So that's what sort of geared me towards Ronnie and the pods and homeschooling. So I'm kind of interested in that aspect. So I'm just curious to see, how teenagers can be helped, because that's sort of the age range I'm interested in teaching. So yeah, just here to listen in and get some knowledge.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm sure you're going to learn lots tonight.
Awesome. Thank you.
So welcome. Shauna, I don't see your face, but I'm guessing that you're here as a guest tonight. Last time you were here to speak with us and present. Is this the right Shauna?
Hi.
No, different Shauna.
Different Shauna.
Hi, Shauna. Welcome. I don't think you've been here tonight or been to the think tank though, have you?
No, I don't think I have.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you located?
I'm in Victoria.
Oh, another islander. We have 3 from the island here tonight.
Yeah.
Welcome. So are you in education?
I have been a home daycare provider for many, many, many years, and I have 3 kids of my own. They're now teenagers. Well, one of them's turning 20, so they're getting to be later teens now. But when they were in school, I volunteered. I was very involved in the school because I didn't really trust the school system from the beginning. I was going to homeschool, and then it just felt like too much to take on because of having to do a daycare to pay the bills and stuff too. So I ended up sending them to school, but spending a lot of time in the school system. And after, I think my oldest was graduating grade 6, and I decided to pull them out, and we moved to the Bahamas, and we checked out their private school system. And I just realized that everywhere you go, the education system is pretty bad. So we ended up, we moved here, and they've kind of been in and out of school. So I would say we've kind of played the system so that the older 2 still could graduate and say that they, for family and that, to say they got their diploma. But we've done more life schooling than in school schooling. So I'm interested in ways that we can improve education, and just trying to see where I fit in, because like right now I just work with little toddlers, so they're not at school age yet, but all the families that I've worked with, they've all been, kids go to school, the kids live in a box kind of thing. So I'm hoping that I can maybe show them there's other options out there. They don't have to go through the normal route that maybe isn't best for their children, and they don't know that.
Yeah, I think it's an awareness that's building and getting bigger all the time, but certainly we need more and more spokespeople out there talking about it. Welcome, Shauna. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
So how many of you at some point, particularly during the last 2 years, thought about selling it all and finding some place to hide out until the world rights itself? I know I have.
Yep.
But there's always something that seems to hold me back. In 2008, after the California economy crash, tonight's guest, Lainie Liberty, closed her Los Angeles-based branding agency, and her 9-year-old son, hope I'm saying this right, Miro, decided to be the change instead of victims. And they chose a life of adventure. And boy, did they ever. They sold everything and hit the road for what was to be a 1-year adventure in 2009. But after 13 years in almost 50 countries, they call Central Mexico home. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce the name of your town. I just know it's in the center of Mexico. So Lainie chose to educate her child through the world. She facilitated rich experiential learning, cultural immersion, choosing volunteerism and leadership as his school. And as if that isn't cool enough, Lainie is also a best-selling author, an international and TEDx Edu speaker, teen mentor and coach, adolescent behavior specialist, alternative education advocate who helped to spearhead the thriving world school movement. And she just released her new book, Seen, Heard, and Understood, Parenting and Partnering with Teens for Greater Mental Health, which is so awesome. Congratulations on that. Lainie is also the founder and creator of Transformative Mentoring for Teens that was launched in early 2020, which offers virtual one-to-one coaching for teens, as well as a 12-week course designed to transform lives. So Lainie, I'm extremely happy and grateful that you were able to take time from your very full schedule to spend some time sharing with us this evening. So truly, I mean that. Thank you so much. And I don't even know where you're going to start because you have so much to share with us. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that beautiful introduction and the welcome. I'm really, really grateful to be here. I think it might be better if, I've got so much that I can talk about, but if you guys could chime in and let me know what would be most valuable to you. And I'll just give you a little something to think about. I'm a parent. I'm not educated in the field of education, so I can't speak to you about that, but I did make a different choice as an empowered parent. And a lot of the work that I do with families and with teens is really about the mental health journey. One of the sort of foundations of what I talk about is connection, not coercion, and it's really about creating relationships. So that flows through all of the parts of what I do. I could talk about how we transitioned into an alternative educational mindset. I can talk to you about what it means to encourage and to facilitate and support self-directed learners and sort of a big slash self-directed healers. I could talk to you about mental health. I could talk to you about teens. I could talk to you about all sorts of things. I could tell you stories from our travels if that would be fun. You know, whatever is of the most value to you. And I would love for within the chat if you guys could just put a topic in there. If not, I'll just give you some background while you guys are thinking about the best way that I can serve you in terms of honoring your time. I know that you're educators, and I guess the just along those lines, when I'll give you a little bit of background from our story and how the whole world sort of flipped upside down for us in terms of addressing education. So my son and I, as you heard, we left the United States, which is where we're from, in 2008. And I knew, like I knew I was going to take my next breath, that 1 year of travel was going to be way more educational than fifth grade was going to be for my son. So he went to traditional school up to that point. And when we decided to travel for 1 year, that internal knowing for me drove that decision. And as we got into our travels, maybe 8 months down the road, one of the things that we focused a lot of time on was developing a family culture that was based on partnership, that was based on authenticity, that was based on accountability. And these were words that we used together in order to really be clear about where we were heading and how we wished to spend our time. It was the foundation of everything was partnership. When I recognized that we weren't going back to a conventional lifestyle, my job as a parent was to decide how my son was going to be educated. Because I thought, oh, for sure, 1 year, self-directed education, travel, he'll learn everything he needs to know. But now we're talking forever. We're talking like an open-ended sort of plan. And that really brought us down this rabbit hole. He was 10 years old. We researched what is education. Have you ever asked yourself that? What exactly is education? And when we decided to define it through the definitions that were given to us through the conventional means, going to school, getting a degree, testing, evaluation, scope and sequence, evaluation, all of this came from outside. And we started having these really deep conversations about education. And what education gave us in a conventional sense wasn't exactly what we were looking for. What I wanted was for my son to develop a love of learning, discover who he was through empowerment, feel empowered to learn whatever he wanted, and many, many more things. Like it was like, all the soft skills, all that stuff came up in because we brainstormed this together. And we decided early on that instead of wanting to be educated, we wanted to develop lifelong learners. And that switched everything. Now, I think you can do this within a system. I think you can do this within, some sort of free or freer conventional institution, but I don't think it has to be that. So our whole journey for the last 13 years has been focused on empowering ourselves to learn. And as we started to learn through travel without pressure, without scope and sequence, without evaluation, but solely directed through curiosity, we began to learn together. And as an adult, I discovered that I really love learning after kind of, equating the learning part of my life to being over. I went through school, I went through college, I got a degree in art, I'm done learning. But the actual reframing of learning, of education, and focusing on the learning bit, it really switched the paradigm. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I see there's lots of questions coming in, and let me go back to the beginning and see what we see. All right, so mental health. How do we help our teens, I'm sure is what you're talking about, deal with the pressures they are dealing with? All right, so this is a big one. Helping our teens deal with the pressures. Okay, so one of the things that I facilitate with the teens that I work with is really helping them to fine-tune and understand and evaluate what their core values are. I worked for almost 20 years in marketing and branding, and one of the exercises of creating a brand is defining what the core values are of a brand. And because I had this knowledge, I decided to take this not only into our own family. So my son and I did this before we started traveling, so we understood what our individual values were. I knew what my top 5 values were. He knew what his top 5 values were. And together we created our own combined value system. So you can do this within a family unit and create sort of like these sort of Venn charts of values. But to answer the question, how do we support teens to understand how to deal with pressures? Once they're familiar with their values, and I've got tons of exercises in this book, and I tell stories about how to define your core values, it's as easy as understanding that we don't live by rules, and especially telling a teen to live by a specific rule. Well, what's the first thing the teen is going to hear? That's a rule. What are rules for? They're for breaking, right? Not every, but I will address on a side note, not every teen is rebellious, but the process of individuation and the development of where they are in their developmental stages, individuating and making decisions based on social norms is a lot more likely than just following directions. So when the pressures come up, if they have a roadmap to run their decisions, their preferences, and ultimately how they want to address these pressures through the filter of these core values, it's really easy to tell what decision and what choice is in alignment, right? That's not a rule. And in fact, one of the things that I tell parents is you can live without rules if you have strong values, if the whole family understands and commits to living a values-based life versus a rules-based life. For teens, this is specifically effective because once they hear that it's not a rule that they have to follow, rules feel arbitrary and they feel authoritarian, but values come from within. And the practice and ability to check the alignment with that particular value is clear. It's crystal clear. Is this in alignment with the value that I hold dear for equality or for whatever the thing is, whatever that value is? It's really simple to know what the correct, response to a situation or social pressure may be. So I hope that, that's one way of answering that question. I hold like big workshops on this and we unpack that actual question in great detail, but that would be my first response in order to get through some of these questions. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. All right, let's look at the next question.
There was more asking about mental health for teens, lots of that. And then also how to support a child during homeschooling or world schooling. And
okay, I got so many of those. Let's jump to what do you believe the greatest need of teens is right now? What strategies or opportunities are most effective, beneficial for supporting teens and helping build community? All right, so there's a couple of questions piled into this, Shakira, so I'll try and pull it apart and answer it the best I can. After 2 years of lockdown, for many, not everybody, but most people around the world, not every country, I recognize that. Lockdown is basically the antithesis of the developmental stage of where teens are. Teens are meant to individuate, step out into the world, try on new identities, learn socially, explore, and really take risks. So the world was contrary to what they needed at that time. So there's a lot of undue pressure and a lot of stress and anxiety that has been built up for the last 2 years. Mental health is a huge topic in this generation right now. It is because of the outer world, and it is because of the inner world feeling really chaotic. I think right now teens need the recognition that, number one, their desires that were needed over the last 2 years that didn't get met, that needs to be addressed and acknowledged. We need to look at our teens and say, I get it, right? We're adults. We're no longer in the adolescent stage, but I understand. I truly understand this frustration. And help teens recognize that what they are transitioning through from a developmental perspective is normal, right? The other thing is, so really the quick answer is having the adults around teens. Let the teens know that we understand. We understand that it's hard for everybody, but we recognize that it is especially hard for you. So the second thing that teens really need is, besides adults that understand and acknowledge and recognize, is adults around them that know how to help process trauma. And what a lot of people do not wish to acknowledge is we've been experiencing a collective trauma. So anybody who knows anything about trauma, you know that trauma happens. There's all these stages of processing trauma. But the goal of doing trauma work is to integrate it, to make it make sense, to really come to terms with everything that's happened. And guess what? We've all experienced this collective trauma, and to some extent, we're still experiencing it. So the time to integrate and process is not while you're experiencing it. So having everybody in the community become trauma informed, right? Trauma informed, and to help to normalize the reactions in relationship to what it feels like to be in an act or situation or an experience that creates trauma. That's so incredibly important. So that's the second thing. The third part of the question is strategies or opportunities are most effective, beneficial for supporting teens and helping to build community. So here's the thing with teens or with anybody. Building community for them is a beautiful act, and all of your intentions are great. But if you don't ask the teens themselves what they want or need, it's like hoping that they'll show up to something that you think is great. Again, recognizing this is a stage of individuation. So if you, the adult, the teacher, imagine and design and create the best program possible, but if it's not what teens are interested in or want, they won't get the chance to even try it out because it's not for them. So engage, talk to teens, really, really listen, learn how to listen and understand what it is that they're saying and help them pull apart the needs. A lot of times, a lot of the teens that I work with haven't had the experience of speaking their truth or doing self-inquiry or even talking about feelings and recognizing the relationship that every human being has to their own emotions. It's not part of their general upbringing. So one of the things that I'm hoping this book does is normalizes the act of self-inquiry. But creating a culture that is really based on safe spaces, consent, autonomy, and really working as the adult in a space of patience, because you're not going to get what you want, even though you can see that it's the best thing in the world, until they join you in partnership for this, right? If it's a top-down experience, you've designed the best program, well, maybe it is. But if they didn't opt in and give consent to actually participate, it's going to be yet another great idea by an adult who doesn't understand them, right? So there's that connection has got to be key. I started off in the beginning, connection over coercion. That for every parent and every facilitator has got to be the mantra. Is the thing that I'm saying or the action that I'm doing, is it meant to coerce them? Do I have an agenda? Do I want to control their behavior? Even if it's for their own good, then it's not an act of connection. It's really, even if it on the surface looks great, it's an act of coercion. And guess what? Teens can sniff it out. So Yeah. I'm hoping, Shakira, that answers your question and gives you some, yeah, okay, gives you something to work with. Okay, so Marianne asks, I'm interested in all of it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, Marianne. Teen mental health, support suggestions, how to support a child during homeschooling and world schooling. Um, well, I mean, how do you support a child anytime? It's really, I would say the first step is to normalize self-inquiry, and I've said this already now twice. Um, Normalize talking about emotions. One of the ways that I talk to parents about creating that connection is by inviting parents to do their own internal work and share, um, become vulnerable, show the fallible parts of self. That's a wonderful way for parents, and it's a scary way, but a wonderful way for parents to really connect. I believe during the intros, somebody was talking about how in the school system, they don't need top academics, need those that failed. Well, that's the fallibility. You're tapping into the fallibility and the humanness, which is where we connect. We connect from that place of humanity, not from that place of authority. We don't connect from an authoritarian paradigm. We connect from our hearts, and that's the spaces that if I have any piece of advice, it would be own your shit. Understand that you're human. Healing's nothing to be ashamed of. Get familiar with your own shame, because that's gonna, sort of hide your vulnerability, and be okay with showing up and being seen, heard, and understood by your children, or the teens or people that you're facilitating. So anyway, I hope that helps. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Okay, good. Thank you. And if there's follow-ups, put them in the chat. I'm just going to go down the chat and see what comes up. Supporting teens and young children with anxiety, depression, loss of friends. Yeah. All right. So there are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tools for managing anxiety and depression. There are wonderful exercises for mindfulness. I go through some of them in my book. If it's at the point where you need professional help, then pursue that. But the thing that I like to really address when it comes to anxiety, depression, and other forms of struggles. Look, everybody here is from the Western world, and Western culture is not comfortable with death, and we're not comfortable with being uncomfortable. We just aren't. We have a culture of medicating. We have a culture of fixing. As a mom, by the way, I'm a nurturer. That's one of my archetypes, and I want to fix everything. So I need to keep that in check, because we're not here to fix anybody. We're not here to ease the feelings of being human. If indeed we're talking about a chronic, a very serious issue, by all means, please do get professional help. But if we're talking about anxiety, about a test, about, a driver's test, about meeting somebody, going on a date, if we're talking about social anxiety, if we're talking about something that is as natural as breathing, right? The teen years are filled with this stuff. If we're talking about that, let's talk about the discomfort and get familiar with what that feels like. In the book, one of the first chapters I talk about, in every course that I teach, and every time I work with a parent, I share with them this lesson. I have them, I don't know if I can bring it up. I have them draw 3 circles, one inside of each other, right? And direct in the center is the comfort zone. And when I'm working with families with small children, this is the best time to introduce this and put it on the refrigerator and talk about it always. If you haven't created the culture of having these conversations with younger children, you can start from wherever you are right now, but you've got to be consistent. So recognizing the comfort zone is an amazing space. We all need it. When I work with teens in my courses, I have each one share what a comfort zone example is. I've got Netflix, there's putting on the headphones and listening to music. It's anything that I do in my room with the door shut. Like, I've heard so many wonderful things that describe the comfort zone. And the more that you can prompt your teen or your child to really list those things out, the better. And recognizing that the comfort zone is that space where we recuperate and we rejuvenate. And I always explain it as this is the place where we can finally exhale, right? So that's that space that we all need. It looks different for each person. And identifying that, normalizing it, and creating the language, normalizing the language around that is really important. But the next ring outside of the comfort zone, and when you hear most people talking about comfort zones, you're either in it or you're out of it, right? Those are the two things that we hear. And I want to change this, the way that we talk about it. I want to flip it on its head. So if we look at the ring outside of the comfort zone, we call it the stretch zone. And that's the space where we're not comfortable, but it's the space where we're growing, we're expanding, we are developing new neural pathways, in the brain. We are learning. All learning happens in the stretch zone. We are considering other things, and it's uncomfortable, right? So to understand that the comfort zone, we're stretching too much, we go back to the comfort zone. We can chill, relax, exhale. Stretch zone is discomfort. Anytime, even from a biological perspective, right? When especially as adults, all of you are adults here, there's tons of science that talks about the neuroplasticity, but the only way that we can grow new neural pathways through neuroplasticity is by resting and sleeping, so it has time to actually integrate. So the comfort zone is indeed that space. The good thing is teens have so much plasticity that they're constantly, learning, growing, expanding. But to learn and to grow is not comfortable. And it's to invite everybody to define what their own stretches are is a wonderful way to start this conversation going. And then the last thing is the area outside of the stretch zone is called the panic zone. And that's a space we all know when the amygdala goes offline. We know that Daniel Siegel calls it flipping your lid. We know that it's the reptilian part of the brain, the oldest part of the brain. It's designed to keep us safe. It's the survival mechanism. It's wonderful. We all have this wonderful piece of, hardware machinery in our head, and it's designed to keep us safe. So we're getting chased by a boar. We're going to either not choose from a conscious perspective, but we're going to calculate in that moment. We're going to fight, flight, or freeze. There's also another one in modern day, which is fawn. And I talk about this in detail in the book as well. But it's a space that we can go into, and we're not meant to stay there. It's a survival space. It's meant to keep us safe. And if you have a teen who has anxiety, understanding these 3 stages will help them balance and recognize that stretch, even though it's uncomfortable, is not really the anxiety part. The anxiety part is when we go into our panic zones, right? And there's a lot of research that talks about the the overthinking, and I address this a little bit in the book too, but the overthinking really is the thing that generates anxiety if we're not in an actual fight, flight, or freeze survival situation. So if we are training our brain to go into the panic zone when there's not really danger, this is a time where we need to really look at the way that we're thinking. The opposite of thinking about the future is thinking about the past, and that's what the clinical definition of depression is, or the cause of depression is, besides, of course, the chemical. So determining the differences between, is this a biochemical issue? Address it professionally, address it, with whatever you need to manage, those symptoms. But if it's a matter of reframing the relationship to being uncomfortable, and then managing ways to manage, or learning tools to manage your thinking in order to support not feeling anxious and not feeling depressed. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. So Ronnie, did that answer your questions? Yeah, okay, I hope so. All right, Shauna writes, after all the places you've traveled, what made you choose to settle where I am now? Oh, by the way, I'm in Guanajuato, because I knew you couldn't say it. Well, let me take a drink. So I love it here. That's really the bottom line. My son and I visited here. We produced a conference here about 6 years ago, and I love it. I fell in love. And I happen to be in Mexico. I haven't left, actually, since the pandemic started and the world locked down. And at that time, my son and I were traveling nomadically, and we were going from trip to trip, facilitating trips with groups of teens. And we had just finished a conference in Playa del Carmen in the Yucatan, or Quintana Roo, near Cancun. And we were waiting. We had our flights to Japan. We were supposed to go facilitate a full trip to Japan. And from Japan, we were flying to Poland for another trip with another group of teens. And then from Poland, a month later after that trip, we were supposed to be back in South America for our Peru trip. And so this is how we lived for the last, 7 or 8 years. We had a base in Peru for a while, but it just happened to be the country I was in when the world locked down. Why did I not leave? Well, I fell in love with being here. So also at the time, my son, at the beginning of the pandemic, he just turned 21. He's now 23, and it was time for him to sort of fly the nest too. So after 5-6 months of hanging out together in Mexico, he's like, Mom, I love you, but I'm going to go live with my girlfriend in Florida until we can start traveling again. And so I just stayed here. He left for a year, and I got to mourn the empty nest, even though I didn't have a nest. But yeah, that's why. That's a really personal answer. But I also think, my son and I are still working together. He co-teaches some of the classes with me online. And we also just facilitated our first Project World School team trip here in Mexico. So that was the first one in 2 years, because we couldn't facilitate trips, obviously, during the pandemic. So, yeah, that's why. And if you guys are interested, look up Guanajuato. It is the coolest, most picturesque city in all of Mexico. There's tunnels, and we've got mummies, and there are hills everywhere, and it's a college town. There's like these minstrels that play music through the town. We have this big festival, arts and music, and it's the coolest town. And after saying all that, and after you look at it, you're going to want to come visit me. All right, let's see. Okay, so LJ writes, love the fact that you did this as an equal partner with your son. Thank you so much. When we speak at World unschooling, homeschooling conferences about world schooling. We talk about the educational portion, but we also talk about the partnership paradigm. And I got really clear about stepping into this. And I've always been, those of you that are reading or have read my book, you'll read some of the stories that are kind of horrific about my childhood. But I very, very, very intentionally raised Miro with a high level of emotional intelligence because I was processing my own stuff, and I wanted to make sure that we normalized talking, that we normalized accountability, that feelings, emotions were heard, they were spoken. It was part of the family culture. And when we stepped into our travel lifestyle, it was really because he said to me all the time, Mom, you're always working and you never spend any time with me. And as a mom, like, that is the most heartbreaking thing that you can hear. But after 13 years, he doesn't say that anymore. But anyway, yeah, so very intentionally stepping into partnership. And that meant my 10-year-old son had our ATM code, our bank code, all the money, totally aware of all the money that we had to travel, totally aware, and had access to buying and spending whatever he wanted at any time. All of the decisions of where to go, how long to stay, how each decision would affect us financially was our decision. I didn't hide anything from him. He didn't understand it. We talked about it until he understood it. But he was pretty smart. And when you empower a person to make a good decision, they make good decisions. That's really the crux of it. And I think I was really lucky. I read The Continuing Concept way early in my parenting journey. And that really stuck with me. If you haven't read it, read it. It's a powerful book written by an anthropologist who lived in Peru, actually, with a tribe. And she wrote and commented on the way that they raised their children was very different than the way the Western world rears children. And it stuck with me because she said that here's a common belief that children are born whole. They know they are who they are. We don't have to fill them up and fix them and mold them. They are who they are, and what a gift to be able to, facilitate and to be their guardian during the journey of growing up. And that really means empowering and partnering. It's the language I use. That she didn't use that language, but that's how I interpreted the book and applied it to my own life and my own parenting journey. I didn't do that, though, when I lived a conventional life. When I worked 1,000,000 hours and he went to traditional school, I knew about it. I also knew how to be present, believe it or not, something as simple as that. But I never was present, nor was I a partner with my son, but I knew all these concepts. But finally having time for them was such a gift. And I'm finding from more and more families that have decided to change their lifestyle or was forced to change their lifestyle and spend time together during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, they finally got to step into being present and didn't all the time know what to do with that. But this is naturally how we should be living. We should be living in partnership with those that we love. We should be spending time and prioritizing that. And the other thing, those of you that have children that have grown up, how quickly it goes by, right? It's just mind-blowing. Okay, see, I go off on a tangent. So please, I see, oh my gosh, there's 11 new messages. Let me go down. Here we go. Like to hear, this is from Tanya, I'd like to hear more about your travels, how you supported yourselves, where you traveled to, what kind of routine you had. As far as learning, I have a 3-year-old grandson in Calgary. I'd like to convince my son and his wife to consider doing more research in the education he will be funneled into if he goes to public school. Yeah. First thing I'm going to say, I'll answer some of those travel questions, but the first thing that I'm going to say is it's not easy to live against the convention. It's not easy to step into a different way of being. You got to do some work on yourself and understand that you're number one, you're not going to please everybody, and that's a hard one, especially for somebody who was a people pleaser almost all of my life. So you're not going to please everyone. If you are living a values-based life, then what other people are judging you on may hurt or sting a little bit, but it gives you the direction to stay in alignment. And when you can do this as a family unit, you're gaining strength with each person's set of values. So know that if you're choosing an unconventional path, it's not easy, and that's okay. So just know that to start off with. So we traveled, I sold my business, or sold everything that I owned. I closed my business. I didn't sell it, I closed my business, and we had enough money to travel for 1 year. After that, I had to figure out what I was going to do. So I did some writing and I did a little bit of freelance and all that stuff. But what I recognized is the amount of money that I had to earn in the United States, especially in Los Angeles, and I'm sure in some of the cities that you're in. Well, I lived on the amount of money that I needed for 1 month. I lived on that for 1 year. And that might be shocking. But it gave us enough time to really understand what was important to us. We didn't have a lot of money, so we made our decisions in partnership, right? So here's the strength of he and I, arm in arm against the world and giggling all the way, right? Because we're doing it our way, right? When I started to work again, I recognized that I didn't have to work the same way I did, that my value system shifted. And the things that were important to me then were no longer important to me now. And I've even changed tremendously since then. So it's in the unschooling world, we call this deschooling. But this is basically deprogramming all of those belief systems that were given to us by being a part of a culture. You know, you're born into a culture, you just absorb the cultural norms. And those belief systems sit into our brain as a scaffolding or a framework. And we consciously or unconsciously run all of the decisions that we make through this scaffolding to give it what's the word I'm looking for, to give it some point of view, a reference point to know where we are. But if you work on changing all of those belief systems, what you find is freedom. And it takes some time. It takes deprogramming, or in the unschooling world, deschooling, to be able to recognize those beliefs. And if they're not yours, recognize that they've held a space in your mind, your belief system, for as long as it has, and it served you. And notice when you are triggered based on that scaffolding. Well, wait a minute, my son is doing this, and according to the belief system of our culture, I should be acting in this way, or he should be acting in a certain way. Oh, wait a minute, I give away that scaffolding. I'm rewriting it. But it's not a graceful period, right? It's a period of catching yourself, understanding that you're going to be triggered, understanding that those belief systems are playing, and you go into a reaction mode or a trigger. You get triggered and you react based on this belief system, and it wasn't there to hurt you. It was only there to provide guidance. And so it's just part of coming to terms with your own inner workings. Changing your belief system takes time. Be patient with yourself and create a culture of having these conversations. that's really what it comes down to, creating a culture in your family, in your schools, in your communities about having conversations about your beliefs, about your feelings, about your reactions, about the responses. That's it. That really has got to be it. And then in terms of understanding what it means to put a 3-year-old into a system, there are so many books out there. I have a massive reference in the back of my book, a lot on education, a lot on deschooling, unschooling, homeschooling. There's so much that you can read, so much. I would say, oh my gosh, yeah. You know what? I'm not going to pull out any names at this moment. I'm thinking of, what is his name? Not John Holt. John. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Just passed away. I can't think of it. Of course, every time I try and pull out from my memory a person's name, it's not there. But as soon as I click, goodbye. Oh yeah, his name. Yeah, there it is. Just that happens to me a lot. Yeah, no, emotional intelligence, Norma Jean says emotional intelligence is not taught. So I know this isn't a question, it was a comment, but I would say emotional intelligence actually can't be taught. It needs to be modeled and practiced. Yeah. So there's a difference between facilitating and modeling and teaching. Teaching is top down, and I'm sorry to all the teachers, and I know teachers are good people and they want to serve, but the whole model of top down authority, sage on the stage, dispelling sacred information is not really a good one to learn. You need to partner with the learner. Boy, I could go on a diatribe about that, but I'm just going to keep going. So let's see. What is the name of the book? Oh, this one? My book? Seen, Heard, and Understood. Parenting and Partnering with Teens for Greater Mental Health. Oh yeah, there it is. And Norma Jean writes it. There it is. Okay. Da-da-da-da. There are so many kids that are suffering from mental health issues, but I really think a lot has to do with not having the skills and awareness and strategies to deal with stresses. Yes. Again, teaching resilience and fortitude, creating opportunities to practice resilience and fortitude. It's a different way of approaching. It's like I just gave you a real meta kind of reaction, because I facilitate and I invite people to explore. And then once we've done something really amazing, I ask them to identify, what skills did that take to do that? Was that resilience? Wow, that's amazing. Or was that fortitude? And what did that feel like? And sort of unpack it from that perspective.
I always say you can't teach a child how to be responsible unless you give them responsibilities.
Oh my God, that's so true. Okay. All right, so there was a question, where are some of the places we've hosted Project World School teen retreats? Oh my gosh, okay, I'll list them off real fast. Japan, Peru, Mexico, South Africa, Wales, Thailand. Let me think, there's got to be more. Ecuador, Vietnam, all over.
Amazing.
All over. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for asking that. Bye, Marianne. Oh, did Marianne already leave? Sorry, I'm just coming to all of these. Okay. Larry, the book can be purchased on Amazon. And bye, Marianne. Did she leave? I think she left. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got to the end.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
There was a book you recommended from an anthropologist. I didn't catch the name of that book.
It's called The Continuum Concept, and it's by Lightoff, I think her last name is. Continuum Concept. Just Google it.
Okay, no, thank you.
Yeah. And the John has got 3 names, and I'm gonna find his book. Oh my God. The book that I mentioned about he's written a series of books about why you should get your kids out of the school system. You see.
John Holt?
I'm sorry?
John Holt?
No, John Holt's great.
Okay.
But not John Holt, John he's the one with the 3 names.
Oh.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
sorry for interrupting.
No, don't interrupt anytime, please, please, please.
Is that John Gatto?
Yes! John Taylor Gatto. Thank you. See? Yeah.
It's like the Rolodex spins, but
Yeah, it does.
it's stop.
And I'm old enough to remember Rolodexes because I had one.
I never thought about that. I make that reference all the time. It's like my Rolodex spins, but it never stops where it's supposed to. I never thought about people not being old enough to know what a Rolodex was.
Do you know, I mean, this is totally off subject. Do you know what a sticker price is? I had to, like 2 days ago, explain to a teen what a sticker price is. Do you know what that is? You use that in Canada?
I don't think so. Anybody?
Yeah, it's the retail price.
Yeah. So back in the 70s and 80s, when you'd buy a car, there was the sticker price, and then they'd add all this stuff onto it. So if you wanted to get to the sticker price, you had to negotiate your way down.
Oh, yes, I have heard that term now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was just a weird expression. Like, of course a teen doesn't know what that is.
There's lots of what it is.
Isn't that funny? So can I answer any questions about anything? I hope this was useful. I know I'm speaking to educators.
Oh my gosh, very useful. Lainie. It's amazing. And I love your whole approach to working with kids, and I never thought of it as a partnership like that. And I actually do have a question for you, because I was raised in a generation where, like, my parents never spoke a word about finances, and so I was raised with this idea that would be placing undue stress on a child, right? It's like, oh, well, they don't need to know that. It's
Yeah,
like,
but who said that?
that's exactly who said exactly. But that's the way I was raised, right? It's like, oh, you would never talk about that stuff with your child, because that would, it would create anxiety for them to worry. But I grew up in a home where we didn't have a lot of money, so there was that whole what's the word I'm looking for? That whole lack, right?
So scarcity mindset around money. Yeah.
And so I know it's my story, but it's also like, but it's one that I've carried forward, and I never really thought of it until you were talking about how you were with your son and how you made all your decisions together, and he knew everything was about your money situation, and he was able to spend the money. So how did you work with the accountability for him spending money?
He never did. He just never did. And he always said, Mom, I want to buy this video game. It's, $7.99 online. Is that okay? I'm like, sweetie, you don't have to ask me. It's our money. And that reminder meant that he made wise choices. I mean, the fact that he spent an extra $15 a month on himself, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, And so I always trusted that he would be wise. And the thing is, too, when we're traveling, so if the money's gone, what happens to us? Like, it's a whole nother bit of reality, right? This is an experiment. So we need to budget our money, because either that or we have to go back. And he was loving not having to go to school, and loving traveling, and loving the freedom, and loving learning.
So is this something that you think could be incorporated into like a Western family where the kids are, 12 and 15, and this is not how they've lived, but they suddenly want to recreate their whole family? Oh, you just got dive bombed.
Yeah, what is that? Some mop.
Oh.
Is there? Did you see it?
Yes.
It was big. I mean, I am in Mexico. It's just a moth. It's just a moth. Okay. I think you can. And just as easily as I think that a family of 7 or 12 can create partnership, it's just a matter of, look, everybody's got to be on board because it's got to be consensual, right? You've got to decide what the system is that everybody is going to be heard. Sometimes when I present family culture workshops to big groups, I call it governance. Of course, I'm always sort of pushing them towards picking a partnership paradigm, but some parents won't give up the authority and they want the last word. Some parents don't want to put in the time it takes to come up with a consensus. Sorry. Consensus is probably the hardest way to live in governance. But I'll tell you, on our teen retreats, we spend a month with a group of 15 teens, and everything has to be consensual. All of the decisions, all of our schedule, and we decide the night before. And if we have something on the schedule that one person doesn't want to do, then we have to sit and talk about it until we come to a consensus, right? And that takes a lot of work, and it takes a commitment, and not everybody has the time for that. I get it, but I'm saying with larger groups it can happen because I've seen it and experienced the pain of creating that kind of system, and it works. It does work. It takes more time, but it also, the benefits at the other end are tremendous. But you've got to get familiar with, facilitating nonviolent communication. You've got to get familiar with, really having a keen mind for conflict resolution. You've got to get really familiar with creating safe spaces and then holding spaces. Those are skills that you have to utilize, especially with larger groups, and it can be painful and take a long time. Yeah, there was a question, LJ.
No, it's more of a comment, Lainie. It's really the fact that these are all the same skills that we need to learn for intentional communities and living in intentional communities. So if we're starting our families that way and we're helping to facilitate this type of understanding within our children, our teens, then we've moved way forward in achieving intentional communities.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I totally agree. And I will say, look, if you've read my book, you'll read or some of the experiences I've had as a teenager. And I will say I'm in my 50s now, but I was active in the punk rock scene in California, and I had a shaved head and all that. And anarchy came really, really natural to me. But it's something that I carried throughout my life. And it doesn't mean that I'm into chaos. It means I'm into not following rules that don't make sense. And I want somebody I want to raise somebody who's going to question things that don't make sense. I want a free thinker. I want somebody who's radically in tune with what makes him tick, what makes him, who he is. And my son is an amazing person. I'll tell you that. He's pretty awesome. But I want him to be able to know that he can use his voice to say, no, that I don't consent to that. That is not in alignment with my values. No, I don't consent to that. And it just reminds me of that picture in was it Vietnam? I don't remember where it was, where that hippie put the flower in the gun. Do you remember? Like it was an act of, no, this is who I am, and I stand for peace, or I stand for whatever. I stand for whatever it is, but I will stand in the face of fear to speak my truth. And I think the world needs more of that. I really do. And that to me is what anarchy is.
Yeah, that was in the Vietnam War, I think, a picture around that.
Yeah, that was powerful for our generation, right?
And I think it all does come back to know thyself.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do all that shadow work and heal yourself before you're, I think, in a place where you can form these partnerships. And everything you're talking about, it all starts with us.
Or be vulnerable enough as an adult to admit that you're doing your shadow work and let your kids come along with it.
Right.
You know?
And guess what? Their shadows are from you.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you that, but all the things that get under their skin and they store into their shame chambers is because of you, parents.
Yeah.
We're accountable, so let's heal this together. And I know that's hard to hear.
But it makes sense because when we do our shadow work, what are we doing? We're dealing with our parental relationships 99% of the time.
Child.
And our inner child. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you. I'll yield.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Lainie? That was fantastic. Armando.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. It was very informative. And I
Oh.
definitely really like that idea of partnership. I think that can go a long way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And
Yeah,
Armando?
yeah, Lainie, I just had a curiosity, a question in terms of the formal, result of education is often assessment, etc. And I just wondering if your son has come across the need to write an SAT or anything like that in order to, I guess not by the looks of it. That hasn't been an issue for him.
It hasn't been an issue. He is actually a facilitator in a self-directed learning educational hub. His experience facilitating teens and traveling and being a self-directed learner qualified him for that. His emotional intelligence allows him to speak eloquently and facilitate, other young people. He works incredibly with the age group like 9, 10, 11, 12. That's spot on for him. So he's found his niche. He's also writing a couple of short stories and hopefully long form books that are just so incredibly creative. He's an amazing writer, and he's also designing a tabletop game right now based on authentic myth from around the world. So it's pretty fascinating, the knowledge that he has. Now, nobody evaluated him. Nobody ever told him he was educated, but guess what? Have a conversation with him. Talk philosophy, myth, politics, geopolitics. He's very politically inclined. History, he's a whiz at world history, but he's never been to school. Well, not ever, but he hasn't been to school past 4th grade.
Right. Well, that's really exciting to hear. I get goosebumps hearing that because I just feel like that he's come into the being that he is and knowing himself and having these skills that he's sharing with the world, which is just phenomenal. That's just amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Camille, I want to answer your question. Yes, there are tools to walk you through how to create your core values in here. There's a couple of charts. There's a list of core values. When I facilitate in person, I'm sitting at my desk. I have printed out cards and I've sort of gamified it. So I have taken a bunch of values and put them onto cards. They're cardstock, and we do sort of these, here's what it is, and we reduce piles and make all these other piles, and then we talk about what our internal values are, what the external, what we want to show the world. We reduce, we add, we subtract, and we really make it a fun situation. You could do that. You can do it as a game, gamify it. And then one of the challenges that I give to the teens, that once they figure out the 5 values that they have now, because you have to redo it every 6 months. I know, it's not like a permanent thing. I have them, first of all, put Post-its all over their walls so it reminds them of it. And then I challenge them to give me images. It could be a meme, it could be a photograph that they take from their phone, it could be a drawing or a painting, it could be anything that represents that, and to print that out and also have that up. So the visuals sort of seeing it every day. And then practicing, there's a chart in here that helps people evaluate. Here's the week. Here are the questions that I was faced with. And this goes back to one of the first questions that was asked, how to deal with pressures. So here's the question I was asked, or the challenge I was given, or the situation I found myself in this week. And I've got my 5 values listed. I'm really familiar with them because I see them every day. They're on my wall. I did the work around it. I did, all that processing. Which value do I need to run this through in order to make this decision, right? Or are none of these values that I am aligning with now for these 6 months applicable? And if not, what's going to guide me? So it's more self-inquiry, 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 self-inquiry. It's constant culture of self-inquiry. And that to me is really going to elevate anybody's mental health. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Of course, of course. Any other questions? Anything I can help you guys with? I've got 10 minutes left for you. What can I help you with?
I have one more question. It kind of from what Armando was asking you. So when because he was only 9, 10
Yeah.
when he left school. So things like, you say he's a good writer, obviously probably a good reader then as well. How did that happen? Was it like direct instruction? Like, did you have a time where you went, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to learn reading, we're going to practice reading, we're going to practice math skills or anything like that? No.
Never. I mean, I read to him all the time as a baby, all the way through, until he started reading for himself. We would read books together, but he grew up in a culture where that was normalized. So reading was just a part of his growing up. It was just integrated into everything. I mean, we read Life of Pi, which was, like, he told me, the hardest book that we read together out loud in bed when he was 8. And that was like his favorite book. And when the movie came out, he didn't want to see it. He's like, no, movies are never as good.
Right.
I remember not choosing things that were written for the age. That's part of also kind of raising a younger child in partnership. I never spoke down to him. He asked me a question, I would explain it. If he didn't understand a word, I would define it for him. But I spoke to him the way that I'm speaking to you. Like, I never used baby voice. I had animals for that. I use a lot of baby voices and, pet conversation, but never for a child. Like, I was very conscious about not practicing childism. I just didn't want to raise him. I wanted to respect who he was. And again, I think a good part of that is early on reading the continuum concept that really helped me sort of focus the way that I wanted to parent. Yeah.
So things like the multiplication tables or
I never did that.
Or reading, no, you never did any of that, but he knows how to do it all.
I don't know if he knows how to do it all, and I'm sure he has gaps in his education, but he feels empowered to look up whatever he needs to know. He's quite resourceful, but I never did the multiplication tables with him. I never forced him to do anything. Yeah. But he knew how to do our accounting. He did the budgets for our and money conversion too for our travels. So I didn't teach him how to do that. He figured it out.
Yeah. So, like you said, experiential learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I just have another question. So I just wanted to, I guess, clarify when you talk about teens and all the work that you do, like what is the age range that you're really focusing on? Like how young, um,
That I work with.
yeah, and also like the age range that you could kind of apply a lot of these tools for, like things like looking at core values, like how young could you go? You know what I mean?
So my son and I co-teach a course for the age group that he does really well with. So it's 9, 10, 11, and 12, maybe up to 13. And really, so it's an 8-week course, and we find that simply normalizing and having conversation around self-inquiry is a big part of it, right? We gamify everything when I teach that course with him. Um, like for example, we talk about worldviews. Well, what makes up a worldview? But all the lenses that we see the world through. So we get conceptual and we build our own characters based on this criteria, and then we put them in circumstances, and then we freeze and talk about what they would say and why would they say it that way, and we look at their history and their points of view and all that stuff. And it's sort of a gamified way of understanding perception, but it's also, again, normalizing and speaking to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds in a way where not only they understand it, they get to play with it, but they're also honored because most adults don't speak to them about these sorts of things. They just chalk it up as too much work, or they're not smart enough or mature enough to have these explorations, and that's not true. So the course that we teach for the younger, half of it is sort of the external world stuff, but always processing it through the internal world lens, or what's going on inside, and where we're intentionally doing brainstorms that are sort of like like coming up with their ideas about things and then matching it up to feelings, and then affirming that what they're doing is self-inquiry, and we just keep talking about it. Self-inquiry and emotions, and they're really familiar with hearing these words. What is my dog doing? I don't know. It's pretty real. So hearing those words normalizes the experience for them. So by the time that they can get into some of the deeper, topics like shadow work or archetypes, inner child stuff, belief systems. I mean, we talk about belief systems a little bit when they're younger. And we do talk about the core values, but we simplify it quite a bit for them and just give them challenges around that. But every time we do something, we ask them to explain it, and then we reaffirm that, wow, that was great self-inquiry. So that the acknowledgement of what they're doing becomes this life-affirming, positive habit. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just thinking about wanting to do my own programming and thinking about like what age range I want
Yeah.
to really focus on. So I'm also trying to figure out like, yeah, how young would I go, or yeah, that's really helpful.
Well, again, if you get my book, there's tons of tools in there that you can facilitate. You can look at my website and see the way that I structure the programs, and you can copy it. I don't care, as long as teens and young people are. I mean, we as an army of facilitators are going to change this world, right? We're going to raise the next generation. So take a look at how I do it. Look at my website, copy it, take what works for you, what doesn't, put it into your own words. Take the tools, find your own tools, add more. It's all about seeing what works and what you feel comfortable doing in all of that. Yeah. Oh, my website is Transformative Mentoring for Teens. And then the 8-week course has the description of what we do, and the 12-week course for the older teens. Excuse me, where we go really deep. Here. Yeah, exactly, .com.
And Project World School too, right?
And Project World School is the experiential learning in the world, yeah. And I think that I'm going to combine my experience with Project World School facilitating international trips, and I think I'm going to produce an in-person, like 10-day mental health retreat for teens here in Mexico, maybe by the end of the year. So yeah, that's something that I'm playing with.
You do one for adults too?
No.
No?
I know it'd be fun, but I don't know.
Doesn't sound like you need one.
Yeah. Well, I don't actually like working with adults. Sorry. I like working with teens. That's my, that lights me up. I love it. I love it.
You can
How young do you start? Where would
So my preference is I like working with the older teens. Yeah. But our tween and younger teen course is 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That I work with my son because he's got the rapport with these younger ones. And we
do you
just
have
go-
any starters?
What do you mean starter?
Like starter, where do you start with kids? Like I have quite a few members that are just starting their family, and they want to know when to start their kids. When did they start teaching them?
We'll start from the day they're born. Start
That
talking.
covered in your book?
Well, yes and no. Okay, so yes, the book is written for parents, and there's a lot of, 1/3 of the book is really about parents becoming accountable for their own emotional well-being and their own mental health. And it doesn't matter how old your kids are. But then a good focus of the book is really educating the parent or the facilitator, the person reading the book, about the developmental stages within the adolescence. So if you're expecting your teen to do something that your teen is not capable of doing, well, that's on you. Because if you haven't read the book and don't or done research and understand what your teen is capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing during their adolescence, that's really on you. So the focus is to help parents understand their expectations and to support their teens as they're developing. But you can apply the self-healing and the partnership paradigm at any stage. So that's it. Thank you.
Won't work for my kids because they're older than you are.
I doubt it.
My kids are older than you.
They're
You
older?
doubt it? My
You
son
said
is
they're older than
55.
me?
55.
See, I'm
55, yeah, he's 50.
55 too. So we're the same age.
Youthful 55.
Say that again?
You're a very youthful 55. It's working with all those teens, right?
That's exactly. I work with teens. I have to be semi-young. They called me, I'm older than God sometimes. That's what they say to me.
Yeah, you're just a youngin'.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Lainie. I am so grateful that you took so much time out of your very full schedule to share so much with us. I very much appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. You've been a wonderful group. I really enjoyed this.
So best of luck in your next project, whatever that is. And I know you've made some book sales tonight, so and we will spread the word.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just message me if I can support you in any way. I really, it's an honor to do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thank you, Lainie.
Good night. Thank you, Lainie. That was fabulous.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma Jean. That was fantastic. Really
Yes,
appreciated you
thank you,
bringing
Norma
her
Jean.
on.
That was
Is she
awesome.
lovely? Oh my gosh, I love her.
Yeah, yeah,
Wonderful.
perfect. And everything was applicable to adults, not just teens.
That's what I was thinking, and I was actually thinking the exact same you were about, oh, this is what we need for intentional communities. This is exactly.
Yeah, well, it's exactly what I used to do with adults, including the cards and core values and getting them to talk about that. So it's really neat to see that started early because
Yes.
that is so important.
It really is. You know what?
Yeah.
I even struggle with my own. I remember having to do that myself. I don't know, about 6-7 years ago. I'm like, I don't know. It's a process.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, that's huge. And actually, the book I'm doing by Diana Leaf Christensen around tools for intentional communities, some of that's in there as well. But this would be a beautiful one to combine because adults learn the same as teens. It doesn't matter in that regard, so learning is learning. So whatever tools can work, and especially.
Did you
Yeah.
get the name of her book?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in the chat there too.
A little
Oh,
bit.
is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Where is it here?
Seen, heard.
Heard
What's
and
the other?
understood. Parenting,
Yeah.
partnering with teens for greater mental health.
Yeah. So just Google with her name and then that book and it'll come up.
Carol, I'm putting it in the bottom again for you, Larry.
Oh, okay, thanks, because I got late, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that for the intentional community. I've got
Yeah.
lots of younger people here that, and some of them have grandkids too that
Mhm.
Or if she'll put her
read that book.
her workshop and
It's you can get it on Kindle or you can get it on hard or soft copy, and it's actually not too bad. It's about it's much cheaper, Kindle, of course, but it's not as flexible. It's hard to share when it's on Kindle. I keep doing these screenshots and I'm going, oh, I know I'm going to get in trouble one of these days, but that's how I share. Anyway, I must leave. I have some work to do for somebody tomorrow morning. So
Oh, wonderful.
yeah, great. Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow morning. And thank you, Norma Jean. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for coming, you guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.